The program started in 1984. The first prototype flew in 1998. The civilian version received its Russian certification on November 30th, 2021, after 434 test flights and more than 700 hours of documented flight testing across 3 prototypes. Deliveries to civilian customers were planned to begin in 2022. 6 aircraft were to be delivered that year, 8 in 2023, 10 in 2024. South American operators had already placed orders. The international market was the primary target. In November 2022, Alexander Narodko, the head of Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency, stated publicly, "Currently, all further work on this project is frozen due to known reasons." No civilian Ka-62 was ever delivered to an operator. The helicopter that took 38 years to certify was grounded before its first customer ever flew it. This is the Kamov Ka-62. And the question this video is built to answer is not simply what stopped it. The geopolitical sequence is documented and unambiguous. The question is what Kamov actually built across those 38 years, why it was specifically designed to compete in the Western civilian market, and what it means that a helicopter explicitly engineered around Western components was stopped by the same Western world it was built to serve. Let's get into it. The Kamov Design Bureau's identity was built on a single engineering principle, the coaxial rotor system. 2 contra-rotating rotors mounted on the same axis, spinning in opposite directions, each canceling the torque produced by the other. No tail rotor, no tail boom in the conventional sense. A shorter, more compact airframe that concentrates its structural mass directly beneath the main rotor system. That configuration is not a styling decision. It produces a helicopter with a smaller ground footprint, better stability in hover, superior performance near obstacles, and documented advantages in confined space operations including shipboard, firefighting, and utility work, where a tail rotor represents both a mechanical vulnerability and a physical hazard to ground crews and structures. The Ka-27 naval helicopter and its Ka-32 civilian derivative proved the concept across decades of operational service. The Ka-32A-11BC, which received Canadian, Chinese, and European certification, accumulated over 240 units, built and found sustained markets in firefighting, utility lifting, and construction work across more than 30 countries. South Korea alone operated approximately 50 Ka-32s in active service. The engineering case for the coaxial platform was not theoretical. It was documented in operational use on 4 continents. The Ka-62 was designed to take that proven foundation and reframe it for the international medium helicopter market, a segment occupied by platforms like the Augusta-Westland AW139 and the Airbus H155. The specification that resulted was a 5-blade single main rotor with a shrouded 11-blade fenestron tail rotor, a deliberate departure from the coaxial layout of the Ka-27 and Ka-32 family, chosen to reduce mechanical complexity and bring the airframe into alignment with Western certification norms and operator familiarity. The Ka-62 was not designed as a Kamov coaxial helicopter. It was designed as a Western market competitive helicopter that happened to come from Kamov. That distinction is the design decision that makes everything that followed both logical and, in retrospect, precisely as fragile as the geopolitical environment it was built to depend on. The specifications of the Ka-62, as certified in November 2021, are these. Maximum takeoff weight is 6,800 kilograms, or approximately 14,990 pounds. The cabin carries up to 15 passengers in standard configuration, or 2,500 kilograms of cargo on an external sling. Maximum speed is 310 kilometers per hour, 167 knots. Cruise speed is 270 kilometers per hour, 146 knots. Range is 700 kilometers, approximately 380 nautical miles. Service ceiling is 5,000 meters, 16,400 feet. The helicopter is powered by two Safran Ardiden 3G turboshaft engines, each rated at 1,306 kilowatts, 1,751 shaft horsepower. The gearbox is a 30-minute run dry unit manufactured by Zoerkler, an Austrian company. The airframe uses composite materials for approximately 60% of its structure, with carbon fiber reinforced polymer and Kevlar throughout the rotor blades and fuselage panels. The avionics are a full glass cockpit with multi-function displays, a digital autopilot, and IFR certification capability. The Safran Ardiden 3G, the Zoerkler gearbox, the composite materials sourced from Western suppliers, the avionics suite assembled from components produced outside Russia. That component list is not incidental to what the Ka-62 is. It is the Ka-62. The helicopter was designed from the outset for the international market, and that design requirement produced a specification built around Western industrial components that met Western certification standards and matched Western operator expectations. There was no alternative sourcing strategy embedded in the program. There was no domestic Russian engine with equivalent output and certification maturity waiting in reserve. There was a program that required Western components to function and a market that required Western certification to access, and by November 2021, that combination had produced a certified helicopter ready for delivery. Now, here is the sequence that ended it, because the 12 months between certification and suspension represent one of the most precisely documented cases of geopolitical risk, destroying a technical achievement in modern aerospace history. Russian certification was received on November 30th, 2021. Deliveries were planned to begin in 2022. On February 24th, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Western sanctions followed immediately and comprehensively. Safran terminated the supply of Ardiden 3G engines. Zoerkler terminated the supply of gearboxes. Western avionics suppliers ceased deliveries. According to a source within Russian helicopters cited by the newspaper Vedomosti, approximately 60% of the Ka-62's parts were foreign made, including rotor blades, engines, avionics, and various structural materials. All imports were cut. We have to completely revise everything. There's no point in continuing certification, the source stated. In November 2022, Noratco confirmed publicly that type certification would not be continued. EASA had already suspended the Ka-32's type certificate in March 2022 as part of its broader sanctions implementation, removing European airworthiness recognition from the only other Kamov type operating in significant numbers in the Western market. The Ka-62 program, built specifically to access that Western market, was stopped before a single production aircraft was delivered. The import substitution program that followed is documented and ongoing. Russia's United Engine Corporation began development of the VK1600V turboshaft as a domestic replacement for the Ardiden 3G. The timeline for that engine's development, certification, and integration into a revised Ka-62 airframe is measured in years, not months. The domestic composite materials, avionics, and gearbox alternatives that would need to replace the 60% Western content face the same development timeline. A helicopter that took 38 years to certify in its Western component configuration will require a substantial additional period to recertify in a domestically sourced configuration, and that recertified version, if it arrives, will not be eligible for EASA type acceptance as long as sanctions remain in force, which means it will not access the international market the original design was built to compete in. The K-62 is a helicopter of genuine technical merit, built into a geopolitical trap of its own design. The decision to source 60% of its components from Western suppliers was not an oversight. It was the logical consequence of designing an aircraft to compete in the Western market. An aircraft that needed Western engines, Western gearboxes, and Western avionics to meet Western certification standards and Western operator requirements. The Kamov Design Bureau built what the market asked for. The market then closed the door on the sanctions that made the supply chain possible, and the supply chain that made the helicopter possible in a single policy sequence that took approximately 12 months to render 38 years of development inaccessible to the customers it was designed to serve. The technical achievement is documented and real. The specifications are competitive. The certification, received in November 2021, is on record. What is also on record is the statement of the head of Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency in November 2022. All further work on this project is frozen, a masterpiece built to be flown by the world, grounded by the world it was built for. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. More deep aviation stories are coming.